Okay, so let's look at the review for topic 7. So for number 1, I would draw this in either quadrant 1 or quadrant 2. So on your test, it will tell you which quadrant to draw it in. But it could be in either quadrant 1 or 2 because sine is the opposite side over the hypotenuse. And since the opposite side is positive, that can put me in either quadrant 1 or 2. But we'll just go ahead and put it in quadrant 1. So I can do Pythagorean theorem, 25 squared equals 24 squared plus b squared. And continue with that, and that gives me 7. So 625 equals whatever 24 squared is, and then subtract solve for b. That gives me 7 over 25. All right, so number 2. See if I can erase this. I don't know why it's not erasing everything. I'll just move. Okay, so number 2, the graph of f is given. How are f and g of x different? So let's look at f first. First of all, f, the amplitude is 2. So I'm looking at from the midline to a peak or valley, that distance is 2. So for f, the amplitude is 2. The period, how long it takes to get from here to here. By the way, this is a sine graph because I'm starting at 0. So the time that it takes to get from there to there, they tell me is 1. So the period is 1. And then there's no shift. All right, so that's it. All right, so let's look at g. So for g, the amplitude is 2 because of this number. The period, I have to figure out, is 2 pi, normal period for sine, divided by pi. So that's 2. So g takes twice as long as f does. Or f is half as long as g for the period. All right, number 3. If tangent theta is 2, what is cosine? So we're going to go ahead and draw. We'll go ahead and go first quadrant since tangent is positive. Again, it will tell you which quadrant I'll tell you. So anytime I have a whole number, I can put it over 1. So remember, tangent is opposite over adjacent. So 2 over 1. And then I can do Pythagorean theorem. 2 squared plus 1 squared equals c squared. 4 plus 1 equals c squared. 5 equals c squared. Take the square root of both sides. C is the square root of 5. All right, so cosine is adjacent over the hypotenuse. So adjacent side is 1, hypotenuse is square root of 5. My instruction said round to the nearest hundredth, so you can just throw that on your calculator. I have square root of 5 over 5 for mine, but you can put it on your calculator and get the decimal answer for that one. All right, number 4. What are sine and cosine of 5 pi over 3? I'm going to tell you the answer key was wrong on this. 5 pi over 3 is at 300 degrees. Maybe you figure this out on your unit circle. 300 degrees, which makes this a 60-degree reference angle. That makes this square root of 3 over 2 negative. That makes this 1/2. So sine is negative square root of 3 over 2, and cosine is positive 1/2. I think they had those flipped around. I think they had negative 1/2. That would only be true at 11 pi over 6. So answer key was wrong on that one. You guys were right if you answered it correctly and didn't just copy off the answer key. All right, so you can use your unit circle for that. Okay. Number 5. Nicholas observes a box being hoisted onto a ship. He stands on a dock 150 feet away. Which function models the height, h, in feet of the cargo as a function of the angle of inclination, which is an angle of elevation, from Nicholas to the box. So here's Nicholas standing on the dock. Here's cargo, angle of elevation. We want this height. We know this is 150. So from this angle, I want the opposite side, and I have the adjacent, so that is tangent. So tangent theta equals h over 150, and then solving for h by multiplying 150 on both sides, h is equal to 150 tangent theta. All right, number 6. Today, high tide is measured at 6 feet. Low tide is 2.5. What's the amplitude of the cosine function? All right, so high is 6, low is 2.5. All right, so remember we talked about this. The amplitude is the distance from the midline to a peak, or from a midline to the valley. So we have to figure out how far it is from 6 to 2.5. So 6 minus 2.5 is 3.5. But that's the distance from 6 to 2.5, and I only want halfway, so divide 3.5 by 2. So $3.50 split between two people is $1.75. All right, so similar concept on number 7. Write the trig function that models the average rainfall. So first of all, we're starting high, so we know it has to be cosine, so we can mark out the sign. And sorry. We can also knock out the negatives because it hasn't been translated down and it's not flipped over. We're starting high. So we can knock out those. Okay, so I'm going to kind of do the same thing I did here when I was looking for amplitude. So I have 1 and 6. So I do 6 minus 1, which is 5, divided by 2 will give me the amplitude. So 2.5 is my amplitude. So I've got that. We're starting high, so I know it's cosine pi over 6x. Now the question is, how far did it move? So if I'm starting at 2.5, how far do I move up to 6? And, oh, sorry, not starting at 2.5. If my amplitude is 2.5, where is my midline? So if the amplitude is 2.5, where's the midline? So I take either 1 and add 2.5 to it. So that would give me 3.5, which would put my midline right here. Or I can do 6 minus 2.5 to get that midline. So 3.5 is my midline. All right, so again, find the amplitude by doing high, low, subtract the low from the high. So high minus low divided by 2 gives me the amplitude. And then either add the amplitude to the lowest or subtract the amplitude from the highest, and that gives you the midline, which is how much your graph has been moved up or down. So that's your K. All right, function f is a cosine function with a period of 8 pi, amplitude of 2.5, and a local maximum f of 0 equals 6. What's the equation of the midline? Okay, these problems are kind of becoming my favorite. All right, so let's do it without the shift. So without the shift, the cosine graph starts at 1 normally, but we have an amplitude of 2.5. So we are at 0, 2.5 right here. 0, 2.5. But they're saying at 0 we're at 6, which means there's been a shift up. All right, so if we shift it up, how far did we go from 2.5 to 6? That's the question, and that will give me my midline. So 6 minus 2.5 is 3.5. So that's my midline. All right, so very similar to number 7, how we found that midline. All right, number 9. Select all possible measures for the angle shown. So if I come this way, I know that's 330 degrees, so I can mark that one for sure. All right, the rest of these you can convert to degree measure by multiplying by 180 over pi. So that will get rid of the pi's, and then you could throw it on your calculator and see which one will give me either. I'm looking for negative 30 degrees, I'm looking for 330 degrees, or I'm looking for 360 plus 30, which would be 390, negative 390 degrees. So that would be B. B will give me negative 390 degrees. All right. Remember, negative takes me this direction. All right, what's the phase shift of the graph? Remember, set this equal to 0. So x minus pi equals 0, or x equals pi. So pi to the right. So that's C. All right, average rate of change means slope. So when they give you an interval, they're giving you x values. So they're giving you 0 something and pi something. And they're wanting us to use a function on number 12. So they're wanting us to use y equals sine pi over 8 as our function. So I'm going to plug in 0. Actually, I don't think they're wanting you to use that one. There's no x to plug into on that one. Maybe they're wanting us to use 10. I don't know. Let's skip that one because they didn't give us a correct. I actually used sine x over 8 when I worked number 11. So let's just skip that one and we'll catch it. There's another one like that that's a little bit nicer down here at number 18. So we'll catch that one. All right. If sine pi over 8 equals a, select all the expressions that are equivalent. So these mean you're adding 180 degrees, 360, 720. So 4 times 180, 6 times 180, 8 times 180. So 1 circle, 2 circle, 4 circles, 1 circle, 2 circles, 3 circles, 4 circles. So when I add a circle, so if I'm at pi over 8 and I add a circle, I'm coming right back to where I started. This one means I'm adding half a circle. That means I'm not coming back to where I started. I'm over here, which is not going to be equivalent. So that one's out. The rest of these, though, if I'm adding 1 circle, 2, 3, 4, those are going to land in the same spot. So all 4 of those are correct. All right. Reagan rides on a playground roundabout with a radius of 2.5 feet. So there's the roundabout, 2.5 feet. To the nearest foot, how far does she travel? So we want this. If she goes 4 pi over 3 radian. All right, so I want the distance there. So, normally to find the circumference of a circle, we do 2 pi times the radius. That would be all the way around. I only want to go 4 pi over 3 around. So I do 4 pi over 3 times the radius. And that will give me how far I went around. All right, so that's the arc length. It's the angle multiplied by the radius, or the radius multiplied by the angle, either way. So when I multiply those together, I get like 10.4. So 10 on that one, since we're rounding to the nearest foot. So the angle is always in radian measure. So if they happen to give you a degree, which maybe they did in geometry, you had to convert to radian. But you multiply the radius by the angle measure. All right, number 14. I don't know what the first part of that question was, but it says intercepts an arc length of 29 pi over 36 radians on the unit circle. I think it's supposed to say an angle intercepts an arc length. Of 29 pi over 36. So that would be in quadrant 2. What are the possible measures? Possible positive measure and negative measure for the angle. So 29 pi over 36 times 180 over pi to figure out what that is. And so do 29 times 180 divided by 36, and you should get 145. So if this is 145, if I want to go in the negative direction, I do 360 minus 145, and that gives me 215. And then I'm going in the negative direction, so 215 on that one. All right, the graph that's represented here. Remember, tangent has the period of pi. So this is at pi over 2, and this is at negative pi over 2. So that period is pi, so it can't be either one of those. And then this is tangent. Tangent is positive in quadrant 1 and negative in quadrant 2 and 0 at 0, not cotangent. Since tangent is sine over cosine, sine over cosine 0 over 1 equals 0, so tangent is 0, 0. Cotangent would be undefined. Okay, what is cosine if sine is negative 8 over 10 in quadrant 4? Negative 8 over 10 in quadrant 4. Pythagorean theorem, or maybe you know this is Pythagorean triple, 3, 4, 5, and it's been multiplied by 2, so 6, 8, 10. Cosine is 6 over 10, positive, because we're in quadrant 4, and x is positive here. The frequency, that means I need to find the period. So the period, I look in front of the angle to see if there's a number here, and there's not. So the period is a normal period of 2 pi. Frequency is 1 over that, so 1 over 2 pi. All right, here's the average rate of change. Okay, so 0 something and 3 pi over 2 something. All right, we are going to plug in these values to this function and figure out what y is, because for average rate of change, I'm finding the slope. So I do change in y over change in x. All right, so when I plug in 4 sine of 0, I look on my unit circle. Sine at 0 is 0. So 4 times 0 is 0. All right, next one I plug in 3 pi over 2. So 4 get this out of the way. All right. So 4 sine of 3 pi over 2. Sine at 3 pi over 2 is negative 1. So 4 times negative 1 is negative 4. And now I can find the slope. So change in y over change in x is negative 4 over 3 pi over 2. Multiply by reciprocal to clean up. And that gets rid of that. So this is negative 8 over 3 pi. All right, so problems that you'll see on your take-home, there are 10 problems, and you will have problems similar to 1, but I'll tell you what quadrant it's in. So 1, 5, 6, 2, well, maybe I should just tell you which ones you won't have. Probably not one like 15. You will have one with the average rate of change. You will have one with the frequency. You will have one with the arc length. So probably not a tangent cotangent one, but you will have ones like the other ones. All right, so if you have questions, you can email me or get a group chat going. Talk to you guys later.